So, there are a lot of new samurai games coming out. Not just small indie samurai games, but actual AAA samurai games. Games that are probably going to force me to finally go out and buy a PS5. So today I wanted to talk about them all, give my thoughts, opinions, and really whether or not I am actually hyped for some of them or not. Yet, before we get into these games, I want to first address a fantastic upcoming mod, the Shokuho Mod for Mountain Blade 2 Bannerlord. I talked about this mod a long time ago, but it has come a very long way since then. The dev team recently released a new trailer for the mod as well, which you are seeing footage of right here. And as you can see, it looks incredible. Many of you may remember the old video I made in which I reviewed the Gecko Kujo mod for Mountain Blade Warband, which is basically the precursor to this mod, yet with Shokuho obviously updating everything and moving it all up into Bannerlord. Now, I have to admit, I've never really gotten too invested into Bannerlord itself, despite the fact that it offers way more and improves upon the elements from Warband. I still keep finding myself returning to Warband because of the charm that can be found there and the massive nostalgia I have for it. Besides the fact that Bannerlord always felt to me like a work in progress by Tale Worlds, while Warband was a complete product. The fact that almost 3 years now since it came out, Bannerlord is still being sold as an early access title causes a bit of frustration. But this I feel is something that the Shokuho mod can remedy, being that it can hopefully survive and thrive on its own. Never mind the fact that it is also going to be set in what I consider to be a much more fascinating setting with real historical figures and stakes. But without a doubt, the biggest thing for me has to be the level of polish that is going into the Shokuho mod. I mean, just look at everything they have added. Seriously, this is as impressive as if it was being made by a full AAA studio. And although there is no planned release window yet, I am glad the team is really taking the time to make sure it is absolutely phenomenal upon release. I am super excited for the Shokuho mod and I can't wait to see more from it. I will leave a link to the mod's Discord server as well as the trailer for it and every other game I talk about here today down below. But moving on, let's talk about some of the other big samurai games that have been announced. Starting off with one of the biggest ones, obviously being that of the new Assassin's Creed game, Assassin's Creed Code Red, which is going to be set in pre-modern Japan. Now, this is not a new idea, as people have been asking for it for years, and most media sites have picked up on this, as I have seen a lot of headlines announcing that yes, we are now going where fans of the series have always wanted, Japan. So there is a lot to unpack here. First off, let's talk about the Assassin's Creed series. I know I am not alone when I say I don't really care about the series and the direction it's going in, despite the fact that I do recognize that the series still has plenty of loyal fans out there. Most people I talk to though all agree that the series has just become boring and stale. I really only ever cared about the first 3 games, and then of course Black Flag, which, come on, Black Flag was just a whole lot of fun for the ship combat and exploration alone. I wasn't really there for the assassin stuff. But even then, I have always been super tired with the whole future, modern day / past DNA mechanic. I really care absolutely nothing for it and just wish it would focus entirely on the past instead of pulling us out of it or constantly reminding us that we are in some computer-generated simulation. I am already playing a game, I don't need to be playing a game within a game. It just kills my enjoyment and investment, besides the fact that the stories themselves have so many cliche elements on their own that they've fallen into a rut with these Assassin's Creed-isms. I mean, I get why they had the future storyline in the first place, because it does establish how Ubisoft could take us to a wide variety of different historical settings, but you really don't need that anymore. We already get the overarching story and we can just leave the future part behind. Which then brings us now to the whole Japan aspect. I know it's been many people's dream to play out an Assassin's Creed game as a ninja, or shinobi I should say. Yet, as we have discussed on my channel here before, that whole idea of a ninja assassin has been a falsified, romanticized story that has just become a major pop culture image. There is very little real about it, and by the looks of the brief teaser we got for the game, it's this fake ninja angle that the Assassin's Creed game will be playing to. I am not excited for this at all. It just looks like it's going to be a mixture of stereotypical ninja crap and cliche Assassin's Creed-isms. Yet I'm still going to keep an eye on it, because what I am more interested in is how they will show the world of old Japan. the one thing Assassin's Creed games actually do very well with. Even if they're not entirely historically accurate, there usually is a lot of attention to detail, and it really puts you in a great atmosphere for the period. So I am eager to see what they can do with pre-modern Japan. This also further extends into what historical period of Japan it will be taking place in. From the looks of things, I expect it to take place during the Sengoku Dynasty, Japan's famous Warring States period, which I have covered extensively here on the channel. And to be honest, I don't think that would be the most interesting setting for an Assassin's Creed game to use. Rather, I think it'd be much more interesting if the game was set a little bit later, during the Bakumatsu period and Boshin War, a time during the overall Edo period when the shogunal military government in Edo was coming to an end. This age was filled with all sorts of political intrigue and violence, with plenty of assassinations taking place. I mean, just imagine playing out the assassination of Sakamoto Ryoma. That would be very fascinating. But I doubt they will go this route, so it is what it is. However, two more of the games I want to talk about here today are in fact set during the late Edo period. The first one I want to look at is Rise of the Ronin. Rise of the Ronin is being developed by Team Ninja, which is a division under Koei Tecmo. They are responsible for such games as the Nioh series. Rise of the Ronin is set after the arrival of Western powers to Japan in the late Edo period, an event that would cause a chain reaction that would eventually culminate in the end of samurai rule over the country. I have no idea what the actual plot of the game may be, but obviously we play as a Ronin, going on some crazy adventure in what is going to probably feel very much like a Nioh game, basically featuring a Dark Souls-like difficulty. But the thing I really like from what we have seen is that despite the combat system itself looking pretty wild with all sorts of crazy acrobatics and fiery swords and whatnot, the actual enemies themselves look to be all real humans, and not as fantasy or folklore inspired as with much of the Nioh games. This really intrigues me because it makes the game look and feel way more grounded. I also love all the addition of the firearms we see. This reminds me of in Nioh, where we were able to use matchlock firearms. Here, we will be updated to use more modern rifles and revolvers. But I am also really interested to learn more about what the actual story is. Although both Nioh 1 and 2 had heavy fantasy elements, they were both still using real historical figures, events, and places. I hope this is what Rise of the Ronin does as well, because there is a really compelling narrative that could be woven here. It would be cool if we as the player would actually be able to take a stance whether or not we support the shogunate, or if we take the path of one of the many who would in time call for the restoration of power to the emperor. I also have to admit that I get heavy Way of the Samurai 4 vibes from this, but that's besides the point. Either way, Rise of the Ronin looks really interesting, and the fact that it sounds like it is going to turn out to be a PS5 console exclusive may be what finally forces me to upgrade to next-gen consoles at last. Something I probably should have done a while ago, because I still would love to replay Ghost of Tsushima on the updated version you can pick up for PS5. Fingers crossed that we finally get some real confirmation that it is coming to PC at some point. But getting back to games set in the Edo period, we also have to talk about Like a Dragon Ishin, which is not only a spin-off of the popular Yakuza series, but also looks like a remake of Ryu ga Gotoko Ishin, which was actually released back in 2014, but only in Japan. This time, however, Like a Dragon Ishin is set to come out worldwide. This game also appears to follow some elements of history, as it looks like the character you play as is actually supposed to be Sakamoto Ryoma, the guy I talked about the assassination of earlier. Sakamoto Ryoma was an extremely important samurai figure of the Bakumatsu era, and it is very cool to see games focusing on him. As for the gameplay itself, it looks pretty cool, albeit with a bit of a wacky combat system, but I'd be willing to give it a try. I haven't played any of the Yakuza games, so this is all kind of new territory for me. There is already some gameplay footage that has been released, which I will link down below. Overall, I wouldn't say this game is one I'm most excited for, but definitely awesome to see nonetheless. One thing I really want to highlight about both Rise of the Ronin and Like a Dragon Ishin is that they are both games from Japanese studios that are getting releases in the West, with, like I mentioned, Like a Dragon Ishin actually being an updated version of a game that was previously only available in Japan. The reason I say this is because I don't want to forget to briefly mention the new Nobunaga's Ambition game, Nobunaga's Ambition Shinsei, which came out over the summer and doesn't look to have any plan for a release in the West. at this point in time. As of right now, I still cannot play it, which is extremely infuriating. I wouldn't even care if they didn't translate it. I'll figure out how to play it in Japanese. I just want them to finally release it over here. A lot of Koei Tecmo's other games release in the West already. Hell, Rise of the Ronin is from Koei Tecmo. Nobunaga's Ambition should not be an exception for a series that is beloved around the world. I'm just salty that I'm still waiting to play it. Now, the final game I want to talk about is another game we have known about for a while, this being Sengoku Dynasty. This is from the same publisher behind Medieval Dynasty. It's a city-building survival game set obviously during the Sengoku period of pre-modern Japan. On paper, it's a very interesting concept, but I'm still curious and a bit confused about how it will all play out. It looks as though you will be playing as a simple peasant farmer who sets off to find a land where common people have risen up and overthrown their cruel samurai overlords. So essentially, you are playing as rebels trying to survive on your own in war-torn Japan. Once again, I am intrigued by the idea of it, but I'd really like to see more regarding stuff like, will samurai attack your village? How will things function if your village starts to grow and really thrive? Will you be able to employ Ronin? What kinds of samurai weapons and armor will you be able to use? And on top of that, I think the game might face an issue where the player might want to establish themselves like the lord of the village, almost in a very samurai-like hierarchical sense, but the game probably doesn't want you to. Which could also then lead to another interesting avenue where maybe you and your fellow villagers are believers of true Pure Land Buddhism, the Jodo Shinshu faith of the Iko-Iki. This would actually make a lot of sense and would play into your reasoning for trying to undermine the rigid hierarchical samurai society. Whatever the answer is to any of these questions, I'm going to keep an eye on this one. I'm a bit on the fence about it right now, but it could turn out to be something really special. So, with that all said, these are the games I want to cover here today. It is really cool how many new samurai games or significant mods are on the horizon. It's an awesome time to be a fan of samurai history. What I would like to do now is open it up to you guys. What game or mod are you most looking forward to? Are there any you are a bit skeptical on, like I am? Let me know in the comments below. And as always, thank you for watching, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell if you enjoyed this video and found it to be most interesting.